Drumpftland, or better known as. Caution: this story contains strong language, including the N word, as well as adult topics and uncomfortable topics for people to discuss. If you're easily triggered, I highly recommend you don't read this story. This is chapter 1. It wasn't always this bad, or at least that's what they tell me. The way it is now is the only way I have ever known. My grandparents tell me there used to be freedom of speech, that there was freedom of religion, that there used to be many different kinds of people, and our country was known as the melting pot of the world, where everyone was allowed to pursue happiness. Happiness. I don't believe I'll ever know true happiness. I'm a woman after all. We're not trusted to make decisions for ourselves. We're not allowed to vote, but it didn't used to be like this. We used to get to vote just like men, and we used to get to make our own decisions. We used to have a say in who we married and when we had children. Now, your father makes all your decisions, including who you will marry. After you're married, then your husband makes all your decisions. Luckily for me and my mother, my father is a loving, kind, and gentle man. He is very much about doing his best to protect us and make us happy. I know not all homes are love filled like ours. In many homes, a wife is just another piece of property a man owns. She is a servant to do his bidding. There were so many freedoms before Trump became president and turned himself into our dictator. He promised he would only be a dictator for a day. He promised that in a day he could solve all our country's problems. But of course, a day wasn't enough. It would never be enough. And he changed the name of our country to Drumpftland after himself. We're not even allowed to say the name of the country we were before, and it isn't taught in school for those that can afford to send their children to schools. There are no public schools in Drumpftland, and the private schools are all extensions of the church. The wall between us and Mexico was meant to keep Mexicans out, but they don't want to be here. Now it keeps us in. Everyday people are shot by our own Homeland Security trying to escape into Mexico and Canada. Most of the indigenous people escaped into Canada before the wall on the Canadian border was built to keep us from fleeing what was once a land of freedom. My father was a little boy when Trump made himself dictator. He says people didn't even take him seriously when he ran for president. Trump was a business tycoon and a TV personality, yet he developed a cult following. Dad says lots. Dad says lots of people were shocked and appalled because they didn't realize so many hate-filled, willfully ignorant people still existed in our country. They thought we had gotten past all of that. Apparently not. Still, most didn't take Trump seriously. They just assumed there was no way Trump could win. They didn't believe someone so Hitler like could possibly become president. After all, this was a land of freedom and opportunity. Someone like Hitler couldn't possibly come into power here. They were wrong. I asked my grandparents what happened. How did such a person manage to become president? And they told me that people simply took their right to vote for granted, that too many people assumed that their vote didn't count and didn't matter. So they failed to exercise their right to vote. They didn't bother with voting at all when it mattered most. Yet, Drump's mindless cult followers voted. All those angry, hate filled bigots exercised their right to vote, while too many others failed to go vote, telling themselves it didn't matter anyway. And of course, it doesn't count if you don't show up and do it. Then it was too late. His very first day, there were executions in the streets. Drumpf executed many of the very same people that supported him, along with those who opposed him strongly. He called it culling the herd. He had nothing but contempt for the poor, uneducated, and simple minded. He was most offended by those he perceived as weak minded. As for people of color, if you proved to be useful, you were allowed to live. But Canada and Mexico accepted refugees, and African countries accepted refugees to keep Drumpf from executing thousands of people of color. Muslims who refused to convert to Christianity were deported unless Drumpf decided they were terrorists. Then they were executed. If you were lucky, they just put a bullet in your head. The unlucky ones were raped and beaten to death. Man, woman, or child, it didn't matter. My paternal grandfather is a doctor, a surgeon, and my paternal grandmother was a nurse practitioner, which made them useful and valuable. So even though they were people of color, my grandmother was black and native like my granddaddy. So they weren't deported nor executed, but their home was taken from them. Luckily, my granddaddy's best friend, another doctor, volunteered to take them in, saving them from being crammed into a tiny apartment. My father remembers watching many conversations between his parents and my maternal grandparents. My mother is my father's best friend and the daughter of his father's best friend. Even though she is half Caucasian, they were allowed to marry because the plan is to breed the remaining people of color of Drumpftland out. My parents didn't plan to have children. Drumpftland is not an easy place for an interracial child to grow up. I was a happy accident. My father could have asked for an abortion. A woman can't ask for one, but a man can. All birth control decisions are made by men. Even if you're unmarried, the biological father can order an abortion for you, whether you want it or not. But after discussing it, they decided to have me. Yet, despite having advantages many don't, sometimes I wish I either had never been born or had been born a boy. All socialist programs like public schools are gone. Social Security, welfare, food stamps, etc., were all abolished by Drumpf. I am fortunate that my family was able to afford private school for me. If you can't afford private school, you must be homeschooled, something that becomes the wife's responsibility since women are not permitted to work full time. They may work part-time outside the home, except when they have children at home under the age of 6, and if your and only if your husband or father permits you. If your husband or father gives you permission and you have no children under the age of 6, then you may work part-time outside your home. I was an excellent student and earned a scholarship to be university educated. Of course, I couldn't go away to study, so my hands on training was provided by my parents and grandparents. The other way to become well educated if you're male is to be a devoted member of the church. The church leaders likes its men to be well educated, and they oversee university studies for those who can't go away because they are female or whose families can't afford the expense of sending their child away to study at the university locations near their district. Every district has at least one church, more than one in large, highly populated districts. I wanted to study political science. I wanted to learn how to make things better for everyone, how to make a difference. Except I'm female, so I was only allowed to study medicine and become a pediatrician. Most women only become nurses or nursing assistants, etc. I work at our local clinic slash hospital slash urgent care with my parents and grandparents part time, 24 hours a week, 4 6-hour days a week. That's the maximum a female is permitted to work outside her home. If I were male and allowed to work full time, it would be 32 hours a week, divided into 4 8-hour days, or 6 4.5-hour days plus 1 5 to make it 32 hours. There are no 24-hour stores. The only things open 24 hours are churches and the hospitals. Nearly everyone has Sunday off or a rotating Sunday off, and they expect you to attend church every Sunday you are available and not working. If you are absent more than once in a great while, Homeland Security will show up at your home, and you better have a good reason for missing a lot of church. I was tired and didn't feel like it, or I just overslept are not acceptable excuses. This Sunday, my family and I slip into the pew at the back of the congregation hall. We're the only family of color in our district. If we sit anywhere else, we get glared at, which doesn't make sense. We're not strangers to anyone here. We're their doctors. We know everyone here. Still, people wrinkle their noses at us as if we smell like shit. But if we sit in the very last pew at the back of the hall, they just ignore us. Ava, Brian Cross calls to me. Ava, I saved seats for you and your family up front with us. Now, every single unmarried young woman in the church is giving me the evil eye. I hear one say to another in a harsh, angry tone, I don't know what he sees in her. Perhaps if one of them had been even remotely kind to Bryant when we were children, he might be interested in one of them. And the last few years have been difficult to say the least, making me wish he was interested in anyone but me. They want him for all the wrong reasons, because his family is the most powerful in our district and the most affluent in our district. They're related to the Drumps. Their father's mother's mother was a daughter to our first Lord Drump. Drump Jr. succeeded him as dictator when he passed away and is our current Lord Drump. Bryant sometimes likes to brag that he could be our country's Lord one day. I could care less about his family's power and money. It won't change the fact that Bryant has been cruel the last few years. He claimed me as his girlfriend when we were in kindergarten. The good thing about him claiming me is I'm seen as his property even though we're not married yet. I'm still his future wife, so most men wouldn't even dare put their hands on me. An older married man can't force me to be his mistress. I know in some districts, affluent men basically have a harem of mistresses that live in their homes until he's tired of them or their families secure husbands for them. I am Bryant's fiance, even though he never proposed, so I never said yes or no. Sometimes I feel as if he's my stalker with full access to me, and I can't do a damn thing about it. Nigger whore, someone says in a loud whisper. My father pats my shoulder comfortingly as he says softly, Let's go. Bryant and his family are waiting. I don't look at anyone as we make our way to the front pew. There's no point in that. They would only be motivated to say more angry, hateful things. Besides, there isn't anything interesting to see. Every woman is dressed nearly identically, as well as every man. Women in ankle-length skirts of beige, off-white, or gray or light gray, with matching tops and, and flats. No makeup. Makeup is forbidden, so a man can be sure he is choosing a truly beautiful woman. The men are all in the same style of dress, casual slacks, with button down dress shirts and a comfortable pair of loafers. For men and women, a sweater may be worn over the shirt as long as it is plain, muted, and subdued. Nothing fancy is permitted, and no bright bold colors are to be worn to church. So there's nothing interesting for me to see. I just watch my small feet in their plain white flats because there's no friendly faces for me to wave to or smile at. Just angry scowls, evil cold eyes, and noses wrinkled in disgust are all I would see. The only friendly faces are the crosses, already seated in the front pew, and Pastor Cross. He seems to like me and my family. Yet I often doubt they truly like us. I suspect they just enjoy the meek, submissive behavior we are forced to display at church. That it somehow makes them feel superior. But I know that Bryant is not quite like the rest of his family. Bryant lifts my chin, leans over, and gives me a quick kiss. You look lovely today, as always, Ava. Thank you, Bryant. I respond softly as he takes my small hand, and we sit down. Bryant asks me concerned, why do you look so sad? You have a beautiful smile. I love your smile. I whisper to him softly, you know we don't like to sit at the front. Everyone stares at us when we sit at the front. Bryant looks back at the unfriendly faces. Many other young women try to make eyes at him by smiling and batting their eyelashes. But Bryant asks, with an angry sneer, what in the hell are you all looking at? They all look away. At least he didn't drop an F bomb this morning. That's his favorite word. But they'll be careful about how they look at us for the next couple of weeks and be deliberately friendly. After all, they don't want to offend the Cross's favorite pets. Mr. and Mrs. Cross like being able to say their son is engaged to an intelligent young doctor, that he snagged himself the most worthy female in the district. Pastor Cross begins the sermon with the love thy neighbor stuff. He has to do it every couple of weeks to remind them that we're their neighbors and the good doctors that look after them and take good care of them and their families. He has to remind them that to be unkind and rude is unchristlike. That is not what Jesus would do. And he sounds truly sincere, worried, and concerned. I actually think he believes. My family and I are actually atheists, but it's illegal to be atheist, just like it's illegal to be homosexual, illegal to say anything negative about the Drumps and their family, illegal to obtain birth control without your father or your husband's permission. But there's no expectation of being a virgin when you marry. Men have the right to test drive you like they would a car. And sex is a physical need that men need to fill. So women are their sex toys. Most young women my age have been with several different men or more and are currently being used by several different men or more. A girl's virginity is often lost immediately after puberty. Once you start to look good to men and they start to want you, you're not a virgin for much longer. I don't know how much of it is consensual. I'm sure a lot of it is not consensual. But most of the young women here seem to be enjoying their very active sex lives. But I'm not. Luckily for me, Bryant isn't good at sharing. Plus, he doesn't have any close friends or associates to share me with, and wouldn't if he did. But he does have two older brothers that he shares me with because they insist upon it. And the older we get, the less he wants to share me with them. The more he wants me all to himself. So he's been pushing the marriage thing with my parents, who know I'm not in a hurry to be Bryant's wife. The last few years have been very difficult with him, to say the least, so I'm not in a hurry to put myself entirely at his mercy. But before things got difficult with him, I did look forward to being his wife. Pastor Cross announces, "We have a new resident to our little district." Ava's grandfathers, Dr. Reed and Dr. Washington, are retiring to part time. So this new resident is a replacement of a sort that will start with So this new resident is a replacement of a sort that will start in our clinic tomorrow. His name is Dr. Dunstan Walker. Would you please stand for us, Dr. Walker? Dr. Walker is quite tall, taller even than my father and grandfathers, who were the tallest men in the district, and he could almost pass for Caucasian, but his naturally lightly tanned skin tone gives away that he's not. His smooth black hair is longish. He has perfect cheekbones and well shaped lips. He's a living, breathing work of art, and I find the way the young women are looking at him amusing. They need to push their tongues back into their mouths. Pastor Cross informs our new resident. This is the Reed and Washington family. You will be joining their household. I know they have room for you. I'll introduce you to them properly before Sunday school begins. Dr. Walker makes eye contact with me and smiles. It's a dazzling smile, and I naturally smile back. Something that doesn't sit well with Bryant because he stands, smacks me full force, and orders, "Don't smile at him!" "Bryant!" Pastor Cross calls to him firmly. "That was uncalled for." "She was looking at him," responds Bryant angrily. "Of course she was," responds Pastor Cross, irritated. "I had him stand so everyone could look at him. Her behavior was perfectly normal." "She smiled at him," states Bryant angrily. "Bryant, you're overreacting," Pastor Cross tells him. "And you can't expect her to never look at him or never speak to him. He's going to be living in their household with them." "I don't want him living in their household with them," whines Bryant in a spoiled, childish tone. "I don't want him near my Ava." "Bryant," his father's tone authoritative, "her family will never agree to let her marry you if you keep having these jealous outbursts." Bryant insists, "But there would be no reason for me to be jealous if we were married already. I wouldn't be worried if I knew she was mine." My grandfather, Dr. Lance Reed, tells him, "Bryant, we won't give her permission to marry someone who's abusive." The word abusive seems to register with Bryant. He quickly sits back down beside me, puts his arm around me, and apologizes as sincerely as is possible for him. "I'm sorry. I am so sorry." He lifts my chin, and a trickle of blood escapes the corner of my mouth. He requests urgently, "Mom, I need a tissue, quick." Mrs. Cross quickly materializes a handkerchief from her clutch purse and hands it to Bryant, who gently wipes the blood from my chin and lips, along with the silent tears on my cheeks. He's capable of gentle, loving gestures, but the last few years, he's just been prone to do the opposite of gentle and loving. I look him in his blue eyes because I know he likes it when I make eye contact with him. He thinks my failure to make eye contact with him the last few years is the result of shyness. And I'm not going to tell him he's wrong, even though he is. I've been having trouble making eye contact with him and avoiding looking him in his stunning blue eyes because they have come to terrify me. There's a vacantness there now. His eyes may still be stunningly blue, but they're like staring into an endless black abyss. They are empty and cold, as if he has become soulless. But his eyes weren't always like that. Bryant smiles pleased. I make eye contact with him. His smile is a confusing cross between winning and crazed lunatic. It scares me as much as looking into his eyes. I reward him with an affectionate, companionable pat on his knee. And since it has become rare for me to initiate any physical contact between us, that simple show of affection delights him. He kisses me deeply and holds me close. I force myself to relax into him. I do my best to please him and make him happy, but his jealous outbursts and rages are becoming more frequent, and he seems to be triggered by nothing most of the time. Pastor Cross finishes his sermon. No collection plates are passed. Your 10% tithing was removed from your wages before they were deposited into your account, just like your taxes. As a woman, I am a dependent, and I will always be a dependent. I will not be permitted to live on my own, and no tax exemptions are available to me. Pastor Cross motions Dr. Walker over to introduce him to us. Bryant and his family stand with us. Bryant has a firm, possessive hold on the back of my neck. I'm not sure if his hold on the back of my neck is supposed to remind me that I'm his or to demonstrate to Dr. Walker that I'm his. Now, Dr. Walker, Pastor Cross informs him. This is Dr. Lance Reed and his wife Lupe. He's the official head of household. Then we have Dr. Eugene Washington. His wife is no longer with us. His son, Dr. Simon Washington, and his wife Irina. Irina is Dr. Reed's daughter. And this is Dr. Ava Washington. Simon and Irina are her parents, which makes Dr. Reed and Lupe Ava's maternal grandparents and Eugene her paternal grandparent. Why must he be moved into their home? Asked Bryant angrily. Bryant, Pastor Cross, being patient. I cannot ask an all white household to take in a non white male. The Reed Washington household is already is already a multicultural, multiracial household. He looks white to me, states Bryant. He just has a great tan. Except he's not white, Pastor Cross tells Bryant. That's not a great tan. That's his natural skin coloration because he's colored. I don't like it, states Bryant, stomping his foot as his grip on the back of my neck tightens. I don't want him there, giving me a violent shake as his grip tightens enough to force a pained squeak out of me. Dr. Walker tells Bryant, upset and concerned, You're hurting her. Bryant releases my neck to pull me against him, allowing me to slip under his arm submissively. I want to thank Dr. Walker, but I don't dare open my mouth until I've been addressed directly. Bryant tells Dr. Walker, It's none of your concern. Dr. Walker responds firmly, Someone needs to be concerned. My maternal grandfather, my papa, Dr. Lance Reed, assures Dr. Walker, Oh, believe me, we are concerned. Pastor Cross decides to push forward. Since they're here, let me introduce you to some of my relatives. This is my cousin, Byron Cross, and his wife, Lilith. Byron is our district's head administrator, and these are his three sons. Blake is the oldest, Bronson is their middle child, and Bryant is their youngest. He and Ava have known one another since kindergarten. Mrs. Cross requests as she fans herself while smiling way too brightly. Dr. Walker, tell us a little about yourself. As our Bryant pointed out, you can pass for white. Where did you get your beautiful tan skin from? When European invaders insisted natives have last names, Dr. Walker informs them, our family's last name was Spirit Walker. But after Trump Sr. took over this country and renamed it Drumpftland, our name was shortened to Walker because Spirit Walker was too native. Or at least that's what the nice white folks who changed it told my grandparents. As a white woman, Mrs. Cross doesn't have to wait to be addressed to speak. She may speak freely almost any time she wants as long as her husband doesn't object. She responds as if truly interested. I thought all natives migrated to Canada. Dr. Walker explains plainly. Most of the reservation residing natives managed to escape into Canada, but many natives no longer lived on reservations. We were just typical citizens. Fanning herself, Mrs. Cross exclaims, please excuse me, hot flashes. So, are you full native? No, answers Dr. Walker. My father's a quarter white, and my mother's half white. Interesting, comments Mrs. Cross with a smile that's a little on the seductive side. If she got caught having an affair, it could spell disaster for her and whomever she's having the affair with. Interesting indeed, responds Mr. Cross, not fooled by his wife's claim to be having hot flashes. Sunday school is about to begin, reminds Pastor Cross. After Sunday school, you may collect your bags and go home with the Reeds and Washingtons. Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Cross, responds Dr. Walker appreciatively. Just stick with us, directs my papa. Pastor Wimbley is teaching Sunday school. He usually does. My family, along with Dr. Walker, sit at the back while I'm stuck sitting at front with Bryant and his family. There's a rumor that Pastor Wimbley is secretly homosexual, but I know he's not. He likes to admire my bottom and will give it an affectionate pat when the opportunity presents itself. The clergy may marry, but most don't. Few see a pastor as a step up in the world for their daughters. It is acknowledged that they are men with the needs of men. So several young women will stay for about an hour after Sunday school to provide service to them. But Wimbley's not in the habit of taking advantage of that opportunity. They think it's because he's a homo or too old. I know it's because they don't appeal to him. He likes for me to stay after Sunday school to help clean up. And we do clean up like we're supposed to. But that's when I service him. The first time he approached me to service him, I was very surprised. Afterward, he asked me who had taken my virginity, and I informed him Bryant's older brother Blake had. He's told me many times he's sorry that Bryant is fixated on me. He understands that I have a long, hard road ahead of me with Bryant, that being Bryant's girlfriend, while having its pluses, also has lots of minuses. As a plus, I have never had to go with the other young girls and women after Sunday school to service the pastors. As a minus, both of Brian's older brothers make sure they get to use me regularly, and his father has found opportunities to secretly impose himself on me as well. But I don't mind Pastor Wimbley. He's gentle and kind, and most importantly, he's quick, very quick. He doesn't try to drag it out, and I appreciate that. After all, I'm not enjoying it. So why torture me by taking your time? Pastor Wimbley's lesson today is on the evils of riches and greed. It's his favorite topic to do a lesson on. Many people in our district are poor, and they think if they can find a way into a position of power that they will that will provide that many people in our district are poor, and they think if they can find a way into a position of power that will provide financial wealth, that all their problems will be solved. But suffering in poverty makes you greatly makes you as short-sighted as someone with too much wealth and power. The poor are desperately looking for a way up, while the rich and powerful are constantly working to not just keep what they have, but also greedily trampling those below to have more, more, more. They never have enough. If Mrs. Cross didn't have a dress code to follow on Sunday like the rest of us, she'd show up in a new outfit every Sunday. The poor believe the rich are happy, but I've spent more than enough time with the Crosses to know they're not happy. They're miserable. The only happy one is Pastor Cross, who lives a minimalist lifestyle serving God. The rest of them are a mess. Mr. Cross is constantly stressed out, and Mrs. Cross is almost constantly drunk. Hard liquor and beer may not be available, but wine is. She'll have her first glass when she gets home from church, and by the time they have dinner, she'll have gone through 2 bottles. It will have been the cheap stuff because Mr. Cross fusses when she goes through the expensive stuff like water. Pastor Wimbley calls on me and my family frequently. I find it amusing that the secret atheists know scripture better than the so called believers. They'll walk out of here untouched by Pastor Wimbley's sincere words. Pastor Wimbley asks, "What does Jesus mean by, for it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God?" The supposed believers avoid Pastor Wimbley's wise old eyes. As usual, they don't want to participate. They don't wish to be called on. Yet, Pastor Wimbley still seems pleased. He's not deterred yet. I know my family, like myself, are paying attention. So I'm expecting him to call on one of us. Instead, he calls, "Dr. Walker, I know you're new here with us, but would you like to try to answer my question?" "Of course, Pastor," agrees Dr. Walker. "Jesus means, just like you literally cannot walk a whole camel through the eye of a sewing needle, a rich man or woman that has spent their life seeking riches and has only lived their life as if riches and being rich is what life is all about cannot enter heaven. They cannot enter into the kingdom of God because they have spent their life with riches as their God." Pastor Wimbley is very pleased. "Thank you, Dr. Walker. Now, if a rich man cannot enter heaven, what happens to him when his life is over? He can't get into heaven, so where does he go?" He looks around and gets the same eye avoidance as before, so he calls on me, knowing I will answer without hesitation. "Ava, what happens to a rich man when he dies?" "He goes to hell, Pastor," I answer without a blink. "He lived a selfish, self serving life devoid of faith and charity, so he goes to hell for all eternity. No second chances and no do overs. And anyone foolish enough to follow such a man will go to hell too. The path he walks may lead you to riches in this life, but it will only lead you to hell when this life is over," says the gold digging nigger whore, snarks a young woman. "You shut your fucking mouth or I'll shut it for you," Bryant threatens the young woman. "Miss Cook," Pastor Wimbley tells her, "if you cannot say something nice, you should not say anything at all." But niggers don't go to heaven, insists the young woman's father. Not even if they're good niggers. Nonsense, states Pastor Wimley. Absolute nonsense. No one is denied access to heaven based on the color of their skin. And nowhere in the Bible does it say such a thing. It's how you live your life here that determines if you are worthy of heaven or not. How you live it, not the color of your skin. And nasty, unkind words spoken out of jealousy and greed will not open heaven to you. God created all of us, and he wants all of us to join him in heaven. Why did God create them? Asked a young man. Pastor Wimbley answers with conviction because God loves diversity. The world would be a boring place without it. And your personal malfunction with diversity, your mental illness that makes you hate people not the same as yourself, is your personal problem that will keep you out of heaven, not God's will. You are commanded to love your neighbors as yourselves, and there are no exception clauses listed. And in Matthew 5:44, you are also commanded to love your enemy. Bless them that curse you. Do good to those that hate you, and pray for those who despitefully use you and persecute you. For once in your selfish lives, try to do a little of what Jesus would do. Pastor Wimbley takes a deep breath and closes his eyes. Heavenly Father, give me strength. He takes another deep breath and opens his eyes. He checks the time. Class is over in 5 minutes. You may as well go home. Be well, walk with God, and try to do what Jesus would do. A couple of young women hiss at me as they walk past us. Bryant raises a hand to strike the nearest one. I take his hand and say, "That's not what Jesus would do." I bring his hand to my lips and kiss it. Bryant gently touches the side of my face that he smacked earlier and says sadly, "It's bruising." I respond softly, "It'll heal." Mrs. Cross turns my face to the side to look at it and sighs sadly. "This is not how you treat someone you love." Pastor Wimley asks me concerned, "Are you all right, Ava?" I answer softly as I glance at some young women glaring at me meanly. They act as if I have a choice. Pastor Wimley pats my shoulder comfortingly. "Don't pay them any mind. They're not worthy of your tears. I do hope to get through to them one day, but I fear I never will. Are you able to stay and help clean up?" Bryant answers for me. "Not today, Pastor." He knows I will go straight home afterward and find chores to keep me busy at home. My family pauses to hug and kiss me. Papa tells Bryant firmly, "I want her home in time for dinner, please." "Yes, Dr. Reed," agrees Bryant. My family, along with Dr. Walker, walk home without me. I ride in the limo with Bryant and his family home to their home, my future home. I don't know why they take the limo to church every Sunday. They live close enough to walk like most everyone else. Their house is the largest in the district and sits up on a hill for all to see. Too much house for Mrs. Cross to keep clean on her own, but the help has Sunday off. Mr. Cross drove the limo himself. His parents are very elderly and in poor health, so they are excused from attending church. Mrs. Cross's relatives look after his parents and are excused because they provide their care. Mrs. Cross was once a receptionist. I've heard rumors of how she seduced Mr. Cross and managed to catch him as her husband. But those are just rumors. I don't know how she actually managed it. Perhaps her blowjobs leave his cock gold plated. This really is too much house for them, or for anyone. It feels especially empty on Sundays when there's no help around. No cooks in the kitchen, no maids going around dusting, sweeping, mopping, and collecting dirty clothes, changing sheets, and doing laundry. No butler to answer the front door and oversee the rest of the help. A breezeway attaches the large multi vehicle garage to the oversized house. We enter the house through it into the large mudroom where we take off our shoes, hang our sweaters and jackets. The floors on the main level are heated, so there's no need for house slippers during the winter. But it's late spring, the weather is beautiful, and everything's in full bloom. Mr. Cross, would you like me to run to the cottage and check on the elder Mr. and Mrs. Cross? I offer as we step into the kitchen. I like his parents. If they were ever bigoted, age and illness have washed it away. They are always they are they are always all cheerful smiles and truly delighted to see me. They love visitors. No, I'll check on them myself after lunch, answers Mr. Cross. He directs, go ahead and give Lilith a hand with lunch, please. As you wish, sir, I agree passively. As you wish, sir, mocks Blake teasingly. I simply roll my eyes at him. There's no point in responding. Bronson grabs my ass as I walk by him, and I slap his hand away irritatedly. He and Blake both laugh at me hilariously. That's enough, you two, scolds Mr. Cross, frowning at them. You're behaving like little boys instead of grown men. Would you like a glass of wine, Ava? Offers Mrs. Cross. No, thank you, Mrs. Cross. I decline politely. We really are overdue for having your family over for dinner, she says as she sets the timer for biscuits and cornbread that just need to be baked for 20 minutes. Do you drink at all? Yes, ma'am, I answer. We have a half a glass of wine with dinner every night except Sunday. And of course, we drink the sacrament wine when we take sacrament with everybody else. And my father and grandfathers each have a glass Saturday night as they share a cigar and discuss things at the clinic. That's girl time for me, mom, and abuela. Abuela? Questions Bronson. What the hell is that? It's Spanish for grandmother, I inform Bronson. You speak Spanish? Asked Blake, interested. Only a little, but I'm more fluent than I'm admitting. I know many white people feel threatened when they hear a language they don't understand. Are your grandfathers looking forward to retirement? Asked Mr. Cross, actually interested. It's not full fledged retirement, and Mr. Cross understands that. Very few get to retire completely. They'll both still be working part time. At least one more doctor will need to be recruited before my grandfathers become too elderly to work. Still, I nod affirmatively, even though their nosiness is quite unusual. They've never really asked me much of anything about myself before beyond pleasant, polite things like, how are you? Except for Bryant. We used to be very close. Still, I share. Papa's looking forward to more time with Abuela, and he'll work only Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Granddaddy seems a little sad, but says he's looking forward to more time gardening and breeding rabbits. But he'll only work Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Did you know about Dr. Walker? Asked Bryant accusingly. I admit, I knew they were looking for somebody, but I didn't know who, what, where, when, or anything else until today. I thought they were looking for a white doctor who would live in staff housing next to the clinic, urgent care and hospital. I know they hope to attract a second doctor here, preferably a male pediatrician who can work full time, since I can only work part time and won't be able to work at all for a while once we start a family. And while a small community to look after is appealing, our remote rural location is not. Mr. Cross confirms. Alan, his cousin Pastor Cross, mentioned they were trying to find a white doctor, but thus far they haven't been able to find one willing to relocate here, or the couple that showed interest would be retiring soon themselves. Being a doctor isn't lucrative like it once was. They're not permitted to have a private practice anymore, where they could charge quite a bit per visit. As public servants, they're paid an hourly wage like factory and utility workers, plus full health coverage. Of course, they're paid significantly more than factory workers and such. But ambitious white males are studying political science and law, where things are extremely lucrative and come with power and social status. Doctors are highly respected, of course, but it's not the same as being a government official. Maybe by the time their first child is ready to begin its university education, Bryant will finally have earned his political science and law degree, teases Blake. Leave your brother alone, orders Mrs. Cross, irritated. He's doing the best he can. Not everything comes easily to everyone. Some of us have to work harder than others. Come on, Mom, insists Blake. We all know the smartest person in this room is her. He points to me. He never even mastered tying his own shoes. She began university courses while he was still struggling to get his high school diploma. He couldn't even handle taking courses full time, so he was dropped to half time, and he was still flunking out. Now he's down to one or two classes at a time, and she still has to help him. He's still barely passing with D's. The only smart thing he does is hang on to her. And he doesn't hang on to her because he's smart. He hangs on to her because he actually loves her. He is too smart, I defend, even though it's kind of true that Bryant never completely mastered tying his own shoes. The teacher made me tie his shoes beginning in kindergarten, and I continued to tie his shoes until sixth grade, when his family finally stopped buying him shoes with laces. We both had IEPs, individual education plans, but mine was because I learned so much quicker than everyone else. I was halfway to my doctorate when I graduated high school. Brian's IEP was because he's dyslexic and he struggles with things that require a lot of reading and writing. I tell Blake with feeling, his strengths simply lie elsewhere. He's mechanically inclined. He can take an engine apart and put it back together. I can't do that, and neither can you. But what would it look like if a Cross became a mechanic instead of a politician? It's not his fault he's not being allowed to work with his strengths. Bravo, says Blake, clapping his hands amused. She may not have a choice when it comes to being stuck with you, Bryant, but she obviously cares for you more than you think she does. Just think, behind the scenes, she'll be able to do your job for you so you don't look like a whoppingly giant dumbass in front of the world. That's enough, Blake, orders Mr. Cross in a bored tone. Yes, that's quite enough, agrees Mrs. Cross with a sigh. Let's have lunch and discuss something pleasant, like wedding plans. I'm not hungry, states Bryant, crossing his arms over his chest, defiantly like a child. Are you feeling ill? I ask, concerned, as I step up to him and feel his forehead with the back of my hand. Bryant takes my hand and kisses my palm. No, I just don't want to eat with them. I suggest we can eat beside the pool and go for a swim afterwards. One of the things I do love about their home is the large swimming pool. I just want to go up to my room, Bryant tells me in a defeated tone. Really? Questions Blake, frustrated. Really? You're going to hide with her in your room all day because you're mad and don't want to share her with us? That needs to stop anyways, Mr. Cross tells Blake and Bronson. She's his fiancée. She's going to be his wife as soon as he learns to control his temper. You need to find your own girlfriends, young women who will make good wives like Ava will. There aren't any others like Ava, Blake tells their father irritatedly. They're all bony, pasty, white gold digging whores. And I know when the opportunity presents itself, you'll make Ava have sex with you again. Bryant didn't know. I know he didn't know. And I don't know how Blake knows. I've never told anyone. There was a witness of a sort, the chauffeur. Mr. Cross made him stand outside the limo and wait. I begged and cried profusely the first time. Perhaps the chauffeur heard me. Maybe he told someone and Blake overheard. All I can do is look at the ground as Bryant stares at me. Is that true? Bryant asked me. I can feel my eyes welling up with tears. I'm not going to answer him. I don't want to talk about it. Instead, I tell him, I'll prepare a tray to take upstairs to your room with us. And I busy myself with that. Damn it, Byron, exclaims Mrs. Cross, angry. You just had to bang her too? Bryant has never been interested in anyone else. He's always loved her and has never been with anyone else. It's not bad enough Blake and Bronson won't leave her alone. She went through puberty before Bryant, and Blake just had to take her virginity. Blake inserts defensively. He couldn't do anything with her yet. It was wrong, states Mrs. Cross with conviction. The way you use her and abuse her is wrong. We don't smack her around, exclaims Bronson. That's Bryant. But you're still one of her abusers, she tells Bronson. She doesn't want you climbing on top of her, but you do it anyway. So does Dad, points out Bronson. You're setting such a wonderful example for our sons, she says sarcastically to Mr. Cross. This whole family is going to hell. The only good person in this room is her. I'm just a gold digging whore like those young women they want nothing to do with. I just wanted a better life for myself and my family. I didn't know it would make me the mother of three sons I can't stand. I hate watching this wonderful, beautiful, intelligent young woman try to survive the unwanted attention she gets from us. She grabs the wine bottle and drinks straight from it. How in the hell did you find out? Mr. Cross demands irritatedly from Blake. I know she never told a soul. The chauffeur! Blake shakes his head no. The chauffeur is grateful his daughter isn't beautiful like Ava, but he hasn't told anyone. You forgot the limo has cameras in it. Bronson and I watched, and I copied it before you came home and erased it. I have a copy of every time. I think of them as my insurance policies. She really screamed and cried and begged you not to the first time. She knows you're going to bang her no matter what, so she doesn't beg and scream anymore. But she still requests, please don't, Mr. Cross. It would break Bryant's heart if he ever find out. But you don't really give a shit about any of us, least of all Bryant. After all, he's not going to bring notoriety to the family name. Not without her guiding him at least. And her family will never let Mr. Slap Happy here marry her. He can't get her off and he can't treat her right. But the next time the opportunity presents itself, you'll push yourself between those golden thighs of hers and ignore her tears as you bang her as hard as you possibly can. I'm crying silently as I set two root beers from the refrigerator onto the tray next to the two empty upside down cups with the rest of the food. Bryant steps over to me. I flinch when he raises his hand, but he only gently thumbs away some of my tears. I'm so grateful he didn't slap me. I grab his hands and I kiss them. Mr. Cross wouldn't go to jail for raping me. Men have needs, after all. But it would sully his reputation for everyone to learn he had raped his son's fiancée. It wouldn't change anything beyond that. but Mr. Cross does value his reputation highly. He's quite proud that he has thus far been scandal free. That's because I don't want to talk about what happened. I just want to pretend it doesn't happen. And the maids he diddles are well paid, willing, and no one can prove an aborted fetus that was immediately incinerated is yours. Bryant directs me. Go upstairs to my room. I'll bring the tray. He's never carried the tray before. I've always followed him up the back steps with the tray, but I nod agreeingly and head up the back steps ahead of him. From the top of the stairs, I hear him tell them, I love you too, family. Have a nice day. I step into his room and wait for him. He carries in the tray, and I can hear Blake and Bronson rushing up the back steps. Blake makes it in the door before Bryant can close it and lock it. And of course, Bronson follows him in. What? Asks Bryant in an unfriendly tone. I need to talk to you, Blake tells Bryant. What? You didn't say enough downstairs? Asks Bryant. I'm sorry, apologizes Blake. I know you're upset. I know you're angry. And you have every right to be. But I need to talk with you about Ava. I thought that's what the conversation was about downstairs, Bryant tells Blake hotly. Her and how stupid I am. Blake shuts the door and asks Bryant, You love her, right? Yes, I love her, answers Bryant without hesitation. And you want her to be safe, right? Asks Blake. Of course, answers Bryant. And you want to marry her, asks Blake. Yes, you know I want that more than anything, answers Bryant sincerely. But her family is never going to let you marry her, Blake tells Bryant seriously. She needs a husband to protect her, and you can't even protect her from yourself. You've slapped her around too much. They don't trust you anymore, and are never going to trust you again at this point. Bryant knows that's true and asks Blake concerned. What do I do? I love her. I go crazy on the days I don't get to see her. I know lots of men want her, responds Bryant. You know you're not the only one who loves her, Blake informs Bryant. You know that, don't you? I know lots of men want her, responds Bryant as his eyes wander with his thoughts. Yes, a lot of men want her, confirms Blake. But they just want her. They just want to bang her a few times. They don't love her. They're not in love with her. Pastor Wembley's in love with her, comments Bronson absently. Blake takes a deep breath. Yes, but he's an old man. He's too old for them to marry her to. He'll die while she's still young, and then need a new husband. What are you talking about, Blake? Asked Bryant, irritated. Get to the point. I think they're looking for a husband for her, Blake informs Bryant. They are never going to let you marry her. I saw the look in their eyes today. They've had enough of you slapping her around for nothing. To protect her from you, they will marry her to someone else right out from underneath you. They'll send her to another district if they have to. Tears start to leak from Bryant's eyes. He grabs me by my upper arms, shakes me, and demands, Is that what they're planning? To send you away from me? I don't know, I answer honestly and afraid. They've never discussed such a thing with me or in front of me. Bryant, Blake orders him, look at what you're doing. Let her go. You keep focusing your anger on her even though you're not angry with her. This is exactly why they won't let her marry you. Bryant releases me, but he's beside himself. I don't know what to do. I can't lose her. And you don't have to lose her, Blake tells Bryant assuringly. You don't have to lose her. We don't have to lose her. I love her too. I'm in love with her, and we don't have to lose her. Bryant narrows his eyes at Blake suspiciously. It sounds like you have an idea I'm not going to like. No, you're not going to like it, confirms Blake. Well, spit it out, orders Bryant. You step aside and let me marry her, answers Blake. Bryant shakes his head. No, no way! Out of the question! Just think about it, Blake tells Bryant. As my wife, she would still be here under the same roof as you. You would see her every day and have access to her every day. Yes, she would technically be my legal wife, but I would still share her with you. You still can't marry her, Bryant reminds Blake. You're Dad's successor. You're the one that's set up to follow in his footsteps. He will not let you have a non white wife. But I have my insurance policies, Blake reminds Bryant. He doesn't want everyone to know he's been raping your fiance. Most of them believe he's never cheated on Mom, that he's an honest man. He doesn't want to lose the respect that he gets for that. Insurance policies? Questions Bronson, confused as usual. No, Bryant is not the dumb one. The dumb one is actually Bronson. His hair may be light brown, but he's dumb enough to try and scratch and sniff a sticker at the bottom of a pool. Blake is the smartest. He's especially gifted at reading people. So if he believes my family is trying to find a husband elsewhere, they probably are. Blake ignores Bronson and tells Bryant, I have my insurance policies. Dad has to agree, and he has to leave her alone. She'll be here under our roof as my wife, but I'll be sharing her with you, and we won't lose her. Bryant takes a deep breath. I have to think about it. Blake nods acceptingly. Then he smiles winningly at me. I need a little brown sugar before I go. I look away from him. Blake is the devilishly handsome one. They all have the same piercing blue eyes, but they're more striking on Blake because he has dark brown hair like their father. Bryant's hair is golden blonde like their mother. Bryant is the most innocent looking one. Blake and Bronson have finally satisfied themselves and leave me and Bryant alone. Blake made sure to give me a deep kiss and tell me that he loves me. His happy thought for the day is he believes he almost got me to orgasm. Bryant asked me as we lay naked beneath the sheets, what do you think of Blake's plan? It sounds like a loaded question. I shrug and share honestly. I'm not sure what to think. I think he's being honest when he says he loves me. He hasn't been with anyone else but me for years, and I know he's getting offers. And he's really good at reading people. My family isn't happy with you. My father wants to knock you on your ass so bad he can taste it. If you weren't a cross, he would have beaten you senseless a couple of years ago. When I finished my education without him and started working at the clinic part time is when Bryant started losing his temper with me. That was 4 years ago. I guess that's when he realized just how smart I am. But I don't think he's dumb. I've never thought that. I can't take an engine apart and put it back together. And so he never really got good at tying his shoes. That's a manual dexterity thing. He technically knows how, and I really didn't mind tying them for him. Bryant says to me thoughtfully, I haven't given you many choices, have I? Another loaded question I counter with another question. What do you mean? He answers, I never asked you to be my girlfriend. I never proposed to you. No, you didn't ask me to be your girlfriend, but I admit. But I would have said yes if you had asked. And an actual proposal would have been nice, so I could have said yes before you put your engagement ring on my finger. But I still would have said yes if you had asked me. But there's something else, says Bryant knowingly. I know there's more. Tell me. I promise. I won't get mad. I take a deep breath. He usually keeps a promise. When you began losing your temper with me, I would have broken up with you if I could have. But I can't walk away from you like you can walk away from me. You have no choice, he says to himself. You're stuck with me and my foul moods. I inform him. I only feel stuck when you're treating me badly.